Modern Turkmenistan, formerly a Soviet republic, it is now under one of the most oppressive and closed-off authoritarian regimes in the world. Outsiders rarely get a glimpse inside this secretive country, and insiders rarely get a glimpse outside of it. With a population of just under 6 million people, Turkmenistan is known for its soaring marble structures in the capital city Ashgabat, its natural gas reserves, and its dictator's eccentric personality cult. President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov is only following in the footsteps of his predecessor, Saparmurat Niyazov, the first president of Turkmenistan after the country declared independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Niyazov had formerly served as the president of the Communist Party of the Turkmen Soviet Socialist Republic. His rule lasted from 1986 to his death in 2006, and throughout that time period he built a cult of personality not very different from those of Stalin and Mao. Unofficially, Niyazov was known as the Turkmen Bashi, which means father of all Turkmen. He built gold statues of himself, he named months and days of the week after himself and his family. His book, the Runama, even became required reading in schools. Students couldn't attend college unless they passed a state-administered exam on it. Although all dictatorships rely on brute oppression and military backing, the state of Turkmenistan takes on the appearance of a democracy. The Constitution provides rights like freedom of religion and does not ban someone becoming a member of a political party. The government is divided into three branches: judiciary, legislative, and executive. The legislative branch is bicameral, divided into an upper and lower house, and has over 2,000 members. Seats are won through elections, and the president is also elected by popular vote. At least that's what it says on paper. In reality, all three branches of government are controlled by the president. All elected officials need to be ratified by presidential decree. There are no legislative checks on presidential appointments to his cabinet, nor justices to the Supreme Court. All appointments can be dismissed by the president before their terms are completed. The president is able to exercise power over all levels of government across the entire country. In 1999, the ruling elite voted Niyazov president for life. Although general elections are held, the incumbent Niyazov consistently won with over 90% of the vote, a clear sign of election rigging. Starting around 2000, Niyazov began to consolidate power. He started to purge government officials and security structures, including the head of his own secret police and his defense minister. In 2002, following an armed assault on Niyazov, security forces imprisoned hundreds of suspected political opponents and their families. Suspects were arbitrarily arrested, and prisoners were tortured and denied access to medical treatment. The UN Commission on Human Rights passed a resolution condemning the actions taken by the security forces, but the Turkmenistan government rejected it. Under its new Betrayers of the Motherland law, any opposition to the government would be an act of treason. So what is life like inside the regime? In 2009, Gallup conducted its first comprehensive survey on the population of Turkmenistan, the first glimpse inside this reclusive country since its days as a Soviet republic. According to the data collected, Turkmenistan is a relatively poor country, with the estimated income per capita being $6,700. 3/4 of the population lives in rural areas or farms. However, relative to other Central Asian countries, Turkmen have expressed high levels of satisfaction with their standards of living. The vast majority replied to the survey that they had adequate money to buy food, clothes, and small household appliances. Unlike the US, Turkmen are provided with state-subsidized healthcare, education, natural gas, electricity, and water. The state is also the biggest employer of Turkmen in cities. In terms of political and religious freedoms, there are very few. The country is predominantly Muslim, although they don't adhere to practices as strictly as in other Central Asian countries. Although freedom of religion is protected in their constitution, in reality, religious minorities are repressed by the state. All religious minorities must register with the state, but many are unable to, and as a result, they can be detained, arrested, abused, or fined. Political expression is repressed by the state, especially when it is in criticism of the regime. Turkmenistan is ranked the absolute lowest in terms of journalistic freedom. The state censors all media and the press, including television and the internet. Access to foreign websites and news is highly restricted. Like any effective dictatorship, the state runs a propaganda machine to glorify its leaders and contribute to their cult of personality. More brutal methods of censorship involve torture, imprisonment, and exile. It's not uncommon for outspoken journalists or political opponents to go missing in Turkmenistan. Silencing opposition is absolutely necessary for dictators to remain in power, and physical punishment isn't the only way to do it. Possible rivals, including high ranking military officials that could stage a coup to topple the regime, are kept in check with luxurious incentives such as high level government positions, country houses, free cars, and bigger paychecks. However, if that doesn't work, the regime resorts to brute oppression. Dictators like Niyazov and his successor, Berdimuhamedov, have learned to mask their autocratic rule with democratic constitutions and government bodies that seem to represent the population. Underneath all that is brutal suppression of freedom of speech, human rights abuses, and insulation of the population from the outside world. What is Turkmenistan like today? How likely is the country to open up and implement democratic reforms? Popular demand for democratization is unlikely, given the overall satisfaction with the regime and the standards of living. When asked about his job satisfaction by BBC journalists, a street cleaner named Tursun replied, "Turkmenistan is a great country. Look at our capital. If you work hard, you earn money and live well. I work 6 days a week, clean the tiles of these fountains, and trim rose bushes. I get paid about $100 a month. We are happy, thank you to our president." The capital, Ashgabat, is swept and washed clean every morning by an army of cleaners. The city is heavily policed, with the policeman every 100 meters. President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov even had a gold leaf statue of himself on horseback on top of a 68-foot marble pillar. Under Berdimuhamedov, much has changed, but much has also remained the same. He maintains a personality cult like Niyazov. He once lifted a gold bar in parliament to show off his strength. Unlike his predecessor, he is also a singer, a rapper, and a DJ. His songs are allegedly self-written and mostly about his obsessive love of horses, an important aspect of Turkmen culture. Like the rest of the world, 20th century dictators have also embraced modernity. However, the rest of the population is facing much tougher times than the ruling elite. Today, much of Turkmenistan's population is impoverished. According to Foreign Policy Center, Turkmenistan's economy has been in a sustained economic crisis and is suffering from hyperinflation. Ordinary people are now suffering from food shortages. The regime also reportedly uses forced labor. Schools, hospitals, and state owned enterprises will send their employees, among them children, into the fields to pick cotton. There is a quota of 50 kilos of cotton per person. The employees work with their bare hands and expose themselves to dangerous chemicals. As a result of these unfair labor practices, the US government and several stores such as Gap, H&M, and Levi's have banned usage of Turkmenistan cotton. However, its foreign and economic policy has been shifting towards openness under Berdimuhamedov. Turkmenistan is making deals with China, Iran, and even the EU to import natural gas, a major shift from before when Russia had been its only customer. Berdimuhamedov has also shown a greater eagerness to open up to the outside world than his predecessor. He's gotten rid of the exit visa requirement in airports, making it easier for Turkmen students to access the outside world. Travel from one part of the country to another is less restricted. He has also restored the opera and the circus. The days of the week and months have been restored to their original names, and not the names of Niyazov and his family. Berdimuhamedov also has ambitions for Turkmenistan to become a major international transportation hub, and the government is currently making investments in Ashgabat International Airport to make that happen. Unlike Niyazov, he also seems to be more willing to negotiate with Western countries and has even allowed NATO to use the country's military air bases. However, this is by no means an indication of democratization. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe replied that the parliamentary elections held in 2018 were a farce. There were no election campaigns, and all the candidates aligned themselves with Berdimuhamedov. In the last election, the incumbent president won with 97% of the popular vote, a number that makes you wonder why they hold elections at all. Meanwhile, the state maintains an absolute monopoly over all media and the press. Turkmenistan, like North Korea and Syria, continues to be one of the most dangerous places in the world for outsiders and journalists to travel. A few political opposition groups remain, but they mainly operate outside of Turkmenistan, and there don't seem to be any popular demands for political reform. We can only hope that Turkmenistan continues to pursue an open economic and foreign policy in the future, and that when the time comes for the country to open up and democratize, it happens peacefully.